Dave Cannons has raced in almost 20 marathons, including 4 ultramarathons. A self-proclaimed couch potato, he took up running 10 years ago.
One of my old co-workers is a top ultra-marathon runner in Canada. He'd always be talking about it, and he brought in a pamphlet for a 5K race, and I trained for that, and it sort of snowballed from there. So within a year, I'd ran my Cleveland Marathon. It was my first. I was kind of, frightened by the distance, and in my morning runs, I'd think, will I ever finish a marathon? And once I did the marathon, that was my distance. I found it suited me.
How did Dave feel after his first marathon experience?
Horrible. It was not a good experience. I was competitive with one of the guys that I went with, and we were the same age. It was our first race. We both wanted to get under 3:30, and so we both went out way too hard. And it was a hot day, and it was just a horrible last 6-7 miles. You can never predict how you're going to feel. The last marathon I ran in Maine, I just felt wonderful. I passed hundreds and hundreds of people in the last 5 miles, totally unpredicted. Last year, just before the Ottawa Marathon, I was diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma. So I finished all my training runs, but I had some surgery, and right now I'm on long-term chemotherapy. So I actually tried to go for a little run a couple days ago, but the drugs I'm taking don't let me. I don't have any stamina right now, so I'm following along behind Jim on the bicycle for now, and with the hope of a fall marathon.
Derek Spafford and Sarah Montgomery are ultramarathon trail runners.
Running's been such a big part of my life. I've been running since 1982, year-round, and from high school, from running 800 meters on the track to it's progressed now to running 100-mile races. Wow, to do 100 miles in one day seems like a pretty interesting thing to do.
I got into running in my 20s. It just started with very small distances just to keep in shape, and then I ran my first half marathon, and it was great. I found it really tough, and I think that was part of the appeal. It was a challenge. I think it was a couple of years after that I ran my first marathon, and once I accomplished that, which was something I never thought I would be able to do, it was very empowering, and I decided I wanted to try and do another one immediately, and just became more and more obsessed with trying to do better and run a little faster, and so I got very into that, and I think I ended up running maybe 6 marathons.
Derek won the Halliburton Forest 100-mile trail race in 2008. I
ran 18 hours and 42 minutes for the 100 miles on the course. It was definitely the toughest thing I'd done at that point, and I ended up winning it that year. And my goal going into last year's race, 2009, was to hopefully run it faster than 1842, break the course record of 1823. I was able to run faster than I thought I would. I ran 17 hours and 52 minutes. So I broke the old course record, but I ended up finishing second. All of our ultramarathons are run on trails. During the winter months, we do a large percentage of our running on running snowshoes.
Having the similar experience to a marathon, but doing it all in the woods, it completely clicked with me, and I have not gone back. So I just keep, even now, most of my training is on the trails, and I just really enjoy being out in nature.
With 15 weeks to go before the Ottawa Marathon, I joined Jan and Kathy for a chilly February training run.
I just decided one day it's time to get fit and healthy, and how am I going to do it? So I went to the running room and I asked a few questions, and I showed up and I thought, if I'm the oldest and the fattest, I'm going home. But I was clearly the oldest, but not the fattest, so I stayed, and it's turned my life around. Everything that I do now has something to do with running, or the things I learned to do to augment my running, and it's just been an awesome experience.
For me, my sister-in-law actually talked me into it, and I was going through a tough time. My son is bipolar and a lot of stress in my life, so we decided, what the heck, let's just try it. So we started it with the Learn to Run, and we just progressed up from there.
To succeed at their first marathon, Kathy and Jan need to focus on their areas of weakness and make sure that they don't injure themselves before the race. Any concerns between now and the run itself?
Hamstrings for me.
Hamstring?
Yeah. Big trouble.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, especially with hills. Yeah, I damaged them, I guess it'd be 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I took a year almost to get them better.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so now I'm hesitant on hills.
So what do you do with the hills? Just go very slowly?
Very slow. Well, I go up really quickly because it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And go down really slow.
Another concern for Kathy is asthma, something that the cold weather can provoke.
Well, I use Flovent every day, which is a steroid, and it really helps a lot because now when I do a short run, I can go do a 10K run without my inhaler, like my Ventolin, the short-term inhaler. It's pretty much under control. In the winter, though, the cold weather really makes my breathing worse, especially in a wind. But I just slow down, and Jan has to wait for me.
Which is a switch.
Jan also bikes and rows, but she's developed a problem with her hip due to the long hours of cross training.
Most evenings I train for 3 or 4 hours. I ride indoors a couple of times a week. It's turned out to be incredibly good training because what I was having trouble was with hip flexors, and of course with my biking I'm using my hip extensors, so it's balancing me out and it's actually helping quite a bit. But there's the fatigue factor, that's the other thing.
Jan and Kathy will be running their first marathon in Ottawa at the end of May. So how do you feel about the upcoming marathon then? Do you feel like you're in
I'm getting excited.
Yeah?
I'm getting excited.
We'll be ready.
Yeah, you know, it's only 15 weeks, but that's still lots of time to train.
Do you have any particular goal for the marathon? Any times in sight?
We're hoping for 4:15, 4:30
Yeah.
to be upright and standing and smiling when we're done.
Yeah, exactly. To succeed is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
This is the one for fun. This is the first one. I'll never have another first marathon.
Laurie Brake was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 10 years ago. I joined Laurie for an early evening training run and learned that diabetes creates a whole new set of challenges for a marathon runner.
Having diabetes, I anticipate that there'll be some lows and some issues with sugar. It's a daily challenge of managing the blood sugars and making sure, regardless whether I run a marathon, it's still a daily challenge. It's more of a challenge when I'm that active.
What sort of challenges do you have to face pretty much every time you're out running?
It's a big thing with the blood sugar, making sure that it kind of stays stable rather than going really, really low, or the other way, which is really, really high. So I find it a bit of a challenge. I use an insulin pump, so it's a lot of work and a lot of concentration to program it. So lowering it slowly over time as the more I continue to train, and then before I go out, making sure I know, okay, I'm leaving it around this time,
Right.
and I have to have a few hours before that to adjust the pump so it lowers the amount of insulin I get. It takes a few hours before it starts to work anyway, so you have to lower it in advance. I think the first marathon I did, it took me close to 10 months to work through that, because again, it's an ongoing daily thing, and figure it out and figure out what's right for me.
So what happens if you don't keep it regulated?
I'm prone to severe lows, so if I don't watch my sugar, if I don't keep up on it, then it goes really low.
And then what?
Well, then I feel really bad. So I mean, I, knock on wood, haven't had any problems with seizures or going unconscious or anything, but that's certainly something that could happen if it does go too low without correcting it.
So what are the precautions that you take just to make sure that in case something happens?
I eat lots of snacks before.
Yeah.
Again, I carry a lot of different sources of sugar, liquids, food, so like granola bars and stuff, sometimes the gel packs or something equivalent, and I usually have a snack before I go.
For training runs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I check my sugar before I leave, check it when I get back, I eat when I get back.
Okay.
And then I usually about 5 to 6 hours later eat again,
Yep.
so that I don't, about 12 hours later I find I tend to go a little bit low as my body is trying to recoup what it's used up. So I eat an additional snack.
So that's just the training run. When you're
Yeah.
out there running a marathon, that's a few hours and it's a little bit further
Yeah.
than the training run.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of things that can happen in that time.
My rule is, every 2 miles I'll have something. So I kind of keep it constantly going back in.
Coming up on 26.2 and beyond, Derek and Sarah deal with their injury frustrations. Plus Jim challenges himself to beat his personal best.